Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. On today's episode, we're going to be gathering around the virtual water cooler to talk about what we've been up to. My name is Ben Pearson. I am the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I am joined on today's episode by Slash Film managing editor Jacob Hall.
Ho, 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 it's almost Christmas, so I can say that instead of my usual greeting, because I don't know if I'll be able to record next week.
All right, I'm also joined by weekend editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Disappointing. All of you did not do Christmas greetings. I thought I was establishing a trend.
All right, let's start over.
I thought I was going to do a thing. All of you guys would say, oh, what a cute thing Jacob just did. Maybe I'll build on that, and I'll say Merry Christmas.
Or
I'll say
to peer
Rudolph.
pressure.
Well,
Brad shouldn't say anything, so I was like, oh, no, I don't want to seem uncool.
I honestly couldn't think of anything good to say that was Christmassy and matched what I say, so I was just going to save it until next week.
Well, I don't want a lot for Christmas.
There's just one thing you need, H.
There's just one thing I need.
The one thing I need is for all of you to take my lead and realize that in proper improv classes, you learn to ask yes and not just to ignore what your improv partner says when he introduces the Christmas theme at the top of the podcast. So screw all of you. No Merry Christmases, no Happy Holidays, none of it to any of you.
Are we starting over? What if the whole show is just us trying to get this intro right? Just like a full hour of just.
I refuse to start over. We're keeping all of this in. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We're almost, as Jacob said, we're almost near Christmas. Peter is not available this week, but he will be back, I believe, for the Mandalorian episode, and then he'll be back in full swing, I think, next week. But let's jump into it. We were going to talk about, just skip right into what we've been reading, because as the pandemic is still raging, most of us have not been doing much of anything. But Jacob raised an interesting idea in our Slack right before we started recording, and I told him to toss it in here and let's talk about it on the podcast. So Jacob, what is this question you wanted to pose to the group?
I ran out of space in my Gmail. It popped up very suddenly, this very threatening message about how I'll stop receiving emails soon. So I cleared out my Google Drive. I deleted everything I possibly could. And the message persisted for days. I thought, every email I got, I thought, oh my God, it's just the one where I stopped getting emails. And eventually I just did a shortcut where you type in is apostrophe unread. You select all visible emails. You click on little other notifications saying select all like this. It's much harder than it should be. And I deleted all the emails that were unread in my inbox, mostly spam. Mostly stuff from publicists that were trying to sell me on movies I had no interest in clicking on. And it ended up being 51,000 emails that were considered unimportant, so I had no qualms on deleting them. But it took a long time. It took a long time to delete 51,000 emails. And so HU later suggested to me that Google seems to be maybe having a lower cap on their storage, which is why this happened. But I've never seen this before. It's a Gmail account I've had for well over a decade now. So I'm curious to all of you, have you ever run out of space in Gmail?
Well, I think it's actually Google announced recently that they're actually instituting a cap, because beforehand they had offered limitless storage. But I think a couple of months ago, they said that starting the new year, 2021 or something, or sometime soon, they're going to be instituting a cap on all of the Google cloud spaces. So not just Gmail, but Google Photos, I remember, was a big one, and other such things. So, and I've been seeing the little percent bar on my Gmail storage for a while now, and getting very nervous about when I will be running out. So I've been kind of more cautious about deleting things too. So, but I think it's part of that overall sort of cap that Google is being more strict about now.
Yeah, so I had the same thing too, and a while back, sometime earlier this year, I think I noticed that I was getting super close, and so I started deleting a bunch of old emails, and so I brought it down enough, but it was just taking so long to make any dent in it that I just decided to sign up for the lowest tier of paying for extra cloud space on Google, which is $3 a month, and it gave me more than enough for what I had, and not have to worry about filling it up for a long time.
Brad, they got you. They won.
I know they did. But I will say there is one thing that is happening that I got an email about. I don't know if you guys got this email, but starting on June 1st, 2021, if you exceed your storage limit for 2 years, they may delete some content across your Gmail, Drive, and Photos. But you have some time to figure that out, because even though that policy is effective on June 1st, 2021, it won't actually matter until 2 years after that. So if you've exceeded your limit for 2 years after June 1st, 2021, then you might start losing stuff. So you essentially have 2.5 years to start cleaning out the extra things in there before they start deleting any of your stuff.
Or once again, go to your search bar, type IS'(unread), hit the button to select all. A little Q will pop up at the top of the middle of your Gmail in tiny little letters. Click on that little Q, little link, it'll pop up, and then it'll delete everything unread. If you're like me, like I said, it took a little while. It took probably a good 20 minutes of a message saying deleting emails, but they were all gone.
51,000, Jacob. That's impressive. That's a lot of emails. So, yeah, I'm curious if anybody else out there has encountered anything like this. I haven't personally. Chris, have you experienced anything like that?
Sorry, I forgot where the mute button was because I'm not used to we're using Skype again for the first time in a while, people at home. That's why we sound different. No, I have not run into this problem, but I have seen people talking about it. So, yeah.
Also, just to clarify, because I tried this myself and it didn't work, it's actually IS:(unread).
Oh, is that what did I say, apostrophe?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Brad.
You can also just type in unread into the search bar and it will show you as one of the drop down options, because I've done that before too. Okay, so you don't need to do all the colon fancy stuff.
A YouTube video that was 2 minutes long, went through some agonizing detail is what I followed here. I will say this much: if you had a problem with Gmail, if you've had a problem with Google, if you have a problem with space, if you've had a problem, you should definitely email Peter about this. You should definitely blow up his inbox with your Gmail problems.
Oh, the irony if Peter were to run out of space because of this. But yeah,
Peter pays money for his Gmail. He just told us on Slack from the trip he's on. So don't feel bad. Peter has all the space in the world to send him your Gmail problem.
Yes, peter@slashfilm.com for all of your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns. So, all right. Well, I guess now that the house cleaning portion of the podcast is underway or out of the way, HT, let's go into what we've been reading. What have you been reading recently?
I have been continuing my journey into Earthsea. I finished The Farthest Shore, which is really, really excellent. I described it maybe a couple of weeks ago. I'm going really slowly through these books, which is not, I feel like people may be judging me on my reading sort of speed right now. I can read very fast, but life gets in the way. And, we're all busy people. Anyways. I finished The Farthest Shore, and it's really excellent. I described it last time as being a seafaring type of journey, but it's also the book out of all the Earthsea books that I've read so far that most resembles an epic fantasy and high fantasy of the Tolkien caliber. And it deals not only with that seafaring element and that journeying element, but also those basic concepts of good and evil and tampering with the line between death and life. And it's very fascinating, really great stuff. So Farthest Shore, great book. Probably actually one of my favorites of the ones I've read, although I have, a fondness for the Tombs of Atuan, which is the one I read when I was youngest. So I started reading Tehanu, which I've never read before. And this one is really interesting because it picks up on the two characters from Wizard of Earthsea and from Tombs of Atuan. So it's the one book out of all of these that has that most returns to the two characters that kind of started this series, and kind of picks up on them after their great adventure, after their big journey. And they're both sort of middle-aged, graying people now. And it's a really fascinating, unlikely sort of story that I've read in fantasy. Usually, again, it's all about the great adventure, the great heroes. So you never really see what happens after that adventure. And I'm really enjoying that aspect so far, and how it digs deep into the mythology of the world as well. So I'm only partway through Tehanu so far, but also excellent. Ursula K. Le Guin, great writer.
All right, good stuff. Let's get into what we've been watching. Let's see. I had the chance to watch News of the World, which is Paul Greengrass's new movie that stars Tom Hanks. Brad and Chris, you guys also saw this. Chris, I think you reviewed it for slashfilm.com, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's start with you. What did you think about News of the World?
It was good, not great. I like a lot of what's going on here. I like the basic plot. Tom Hanks is really good in this. I honestly think this should be held up among some of his best work. It's just a really good like quiet, melancholy performance, and he does that really well here. The music, gorgeous music. The problem is Paul Greengrass, who I think is a good director, but I think his style doesn't lend itself to this movie. He doesn't do as much of his style, and for those who don't know, his style it's a lot of handheld, it's a lot of close-ups. Think of his Bourne films where the camera is just constantly moving around and in everyone's face, and he dials it back a little bit here, but he still does it. And I get it, that's his style, that's what he likes, but it just doesn't work with this material, because it's a Western, and it just feels like someone went back in time with a camera and ran around filming people, in the Old West. And I just found that really distracting. And so, I liked it, but I can't say, it's not going to end up on my best of the year list or anything like that, even though, maybe best performances of the year, I would definitely go with Tom Hanks. But other than that, it's fine. That's my review.
Brad, what did you think about this one?
I would say that I maybe liked it just a little bit more than Chris did. I didn't really find myself taken out of the movie by Greengrass's directing style, simply because he said that shaky camera work isn't quite as egregious here as it is in the Bourne movies. So it didn't really bother me, and the parts that I noticed that he was using that, I kind of appreciated it, because it's not something that you often see in the Western genre. But it is very much a classic Western story, of this guy who ends up getting saddled with, no pun intended, an unlikely companion that he has to try to take care of and keep safe, and they encounter various unsavory characters as they make their way across across the desert. And Tom Hanks is fantastic. I very much look forward to the grizzled, older Tom Hanks period of his career, because I feel like he can do some really interesting things as he gets older, and becomes, much more of a gray character, as you will. So it's something that I appreciated very much. I enjoyed watching it. I walked away satisfied. But it wasn't anything revelatory as far as the Western genre is concerned, and I don't think it'll end up making my year-end list either. But I was very happy to have seen it.
I enjoyed it quite a bit, but it's sort of same. I don't think it's going to end up in my top 10. I think it's a movie that definitely is very much a Western. It has a lot of to me anyway, it sort of seemed to pay homage to a lot of Westerns that came before. I mean, there's the classic shot through the door frame kind of thing from Shane and a billion other Western movies that Greengrass almost couldn't help himself but throw one of those shots in there. And then there's this big extended gun fight scene on the side of a mountain that I feel like I've seen in 10 different Westerns or something at least. But it's all really, really well executed, I thought. And I read Chris's reaction to the movie and his thoughts about Greengrass's filming style and all of that, and how it sort of clashes with this material before I had a chance to see this movie. So I went into this film with that in mind, and I also wasn't really too bothered by it. I didn't I don't know, I didn't find that it was that it took me out of the movie too much either, or that it was too much of a clash there. So I thought it worked pretty well. It just seems like a sort of it's a movie where it's very predictable. There's not much special that happens plot wise. It's pretty much exactly what it's pretty much the movie that you think it's going to be, which is good when you're talking about things like performance and just sheer execution, but bad if you're looking for anything super surprising or subversive in the genre. So it's very much a straight down the middle kind of throwback kind of Western. So it's quality. It's a solid movie, but nothing that really lit my world on fire. So
I found myself thinking that it would have made for an interesting pilot for some kind of limited series that would keep following Tom Hanks and this young girl character on a series of Western adventures, and it would be one that would be also cut from the same cloth as Western TV shows, obviously, and kind of strike the same chord that you would say The Mandalorian is in Star Wars right now. But I like these Tom Hanks and this girl's character enough that I've found myself interested in seeing what their continued story would be if it went on after the movie.
Yeah, and I think it speaks very much to, like, while at the same time being this old school kind of throwback, it speaks very much to the mentality that we have in the U.S. right now. It's a movie about truth and spreading the truth across the land, and there's this one extended sequence in the middle of the movie where he encounters this very, this guy who's trying to essentially, like, overthrow a small town and sort of, like, has this small mining community or whatever it is.
It's basically Old West Donald Trump is what they're really going for here.
Yeah. And it's very much like, it's not subtle at all, but I thought it was effective and worked well. And I think you could probably just, I guess, apply that to the entire movie as a whole. So that is news of the world. I believe it's going to be out on Christmas Day, I think, maybe in some theaters. And then I think Universal has that deal where it should be coming, to streaming within, I guess they have the option to release it to streaming within 17 days. I'm not sure exactly when this one will be, widely accessible for people to view at home, but it shouldn't be too long. So you can add that one to your queue. All right, let's move on to the next movie, which is One Night in Miami. HT, Brad, and I saw this. HT, let's start with you. What did you think about One Night in Miami?
Well, this is a really phenomenal directorial debut from Regina King, and it's a movie that I really enjoyed the performances from. It stars Kingsley Ben-Adir, Ellie Gorey, Aldous Hodge, and Leslie Odom Jr. as the fictionalized versions of the great African-American icons, great Black icons, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. And I think they're all really, really fantastic in this movie, which is based off a play. And I do think that, like many movies based off of stage plays, it can't really shake that play feeling. But I do think that Regina King does a really phenomenal job of making it look interesting and visually exciting, and more than just four men sitting in a room having a really intense, deep conversation about their responsibilities and privileges as Black artists and creators and figures. So it's a movie that I was really, like, enraptured by, and probably not one of my favorites of the year, but I just want to, I'm really, like, astonished by Regina King's directorial choices and like her debut here. It's really great stuff from her.
Yeah, I thought it was a very confident movie, a very small, sort of quiet movie. I think it's like the perfect first film for somebody to jump in and sort of, like, get their feet wet and make sure that they truly know what they're doing before they, take a stepping stone up in the ranks of making different types of films. And I think this is, like, a really, really solid first, at bat, if you will. We should note that Kemp Powers wrote the screenplay, and he's the one who also wrote the play that HT mentioned. And Kemp Powers is also one of the co-writers and co-directors of Pixar's Soul, which is also coming out later this month. So he's having quite the moment right now. Brad, what did you think about One Night in Miami?
I actually think that I'm much more warm to this movie than you guys are. Not that it sounds like you didn't like it, but I love this movie. I adore this movie. I'm a sucker for movies that unfold in this way, where it's basically a feature-length conversation between several characters. This reminded me, in some ways of The Breakfast Club, and in some ways of the Before Sunrise trilogy, movies of that ilk. And the fact that it has these four prominent, Black figures at the center of these conversations with these incredible performances. I think everyone in this movie is outstanding, particularly Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke. I think he's phenomenal. But I just walked away really just feeling energized from this movie. And I think that the conversations in it are very provocative and poignant. And it has a lot to say through the eyes of these characters who didn't always see eye to eye when it comes to how to push forward the cause of equality and fighting against racism and how to do it. And it's a conversation that is, unfortunately still relevant today. And you see that some things haven't changed from the time that these four men were in the spotlight and doing what they could to help their community and help the Black population at large. It was just a movie that I look forward to seeing what else Regina King can do, because this was a phenomenal first feature. And I hope that we see a lot more from Kemp Powers too, because between this and Soul, he has put together some incredible screenplays.
Yeah, I think my favorite part about this movie are those conversations that you've mentioned, Brad. Like that's like the thrust of the film is like these four guys coming together in the wake of Cassius Clay winning a prize fight, and just like their celebration in a hotel room afterwards, basically. And the whole movie is essentially just clashing ideals and perspectives about exactly how to live up to the responsibilities that they have as Black people in the spotlight in America. And I loved, just like thinking about what they were saying. Like these ideas are so relevant to what's going on right now, and it's especially in this year in the wake of the George Floyd murder, and with America sort of being I don't know what the word is, awoken, I guess, to the racial injustices that have been going on for years and years and years and years. I mean, more years than we can even count. It feels especially timely, and for people who for people who find themselves wondering how to balance their normal responsibilities of daily life, and also trying to put forth progressive ideals and contribute to the cause and all of that stuff. I thought these conversations that these guys are having, echo thoughts that I've had, and many people I'm sure have had about exactly, where's the line? How do you strike that balance between, going too far in one direction, not doing enough, and all of those ideas I thought were just really, really well captured or encapsulated in One Night in Miami. So I'm not sure. Let's see. There's a limited theatrical release by Amazon on Christmas Day, and then this one is coming to Amazon Prime Video on January 15th. So just about a month from now. Okay, so that's One Night in Miami. It sounds like we all liked it, and Brad really, really loved it. So, Brad, let's talk about a pair of movies that you and I watched: The Way Back and The Vast of Night. Let's talk about The Way Back first. This is the Ben Affleck basketball movie. What did you think about this one?
I really enjoyed this, and more than I thought I would. I thought that it looked like it was going to be a solid sports drama. The fact that it comes from director Gavin O'Connor, who directed Warrior, was something that made me feel like it would have a little bit more bubbling underneath it than just your standard uplifting, sports story of a guy trying to get his life together and, inspiring kids to play basketball and keep their lives going and make these right decisions. And I was right, because I feel like this movie does more with the formulaic sports story than you usually see, to the point where it goes beyond the typical ending of the sports story that you normally see in movies like this. And I was impressed by that, because it goes against the grain of like this idea of that this happy ending of they won the game and he's better now and all this kind of thing. But you realize that those kinds of things aren't always what fixes the deep-seated demons in your life, the things that you're struggling against. And Ben Affleck's struggle in this is that he's an alcoholic because of a family tragedy, and that's something that isn't just so simply shaked by him getting his shit together for a few weeks and winning some basketball games. I think Ben Affleck is fantastic in this movie. I think probably one of the better performances he's given in recent years, and I like the smattering of the supporting cast too. It's interesting seeing somebody like comedian Al Madrigal in a role like this, a serious role as the assistant coach. And I walked away actually being pretty impressed by this movie. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Not that I thought it was going to be bad, but I just thought I knew exactly what to expect.
Yeah, I think the thing that I thought elevated it a little bit, or at least maybe not elevated, but at least set it aside from a lot of the sort of typical formulaic stuff, was the way that it really just concentrated on Ben Affleck's character, this coach who is having problems. And I feel like a lot of other sports movies go out of their way to make the students, the players, the basketball players, give them well-rounded stories. And this movie just doesn't even bother with that, really. You almost don't even know the players' names because it's so not interested in what's happening with them. I mean, there's one character that sort of serves as the mentee that Ben Affleck sort of takes under his wing. But aside from that, the movie does not really spend very much time on the kids or their interpersonal relationships or the dynamics, that are happening on the team and all that kind of stuff. It's much more just, through the lens of this guy, and it sticks with his perspective, and it's not the sort of wide-ranging Remember the Titans-esque kind of thing that has like a bigger scope in terms of the story. It's very like laser focused in that way. So I thought it was interesting on that front. And Ben Affleck is solid in it. It's clear that he's like working through some serious personal issues in in this movie. And I hope that this movie was like a cathartic experience for him. But even with that, like that laser focus, I'm not sure that it elevated it enough for me to be like, oh, this is a movie that I, would absolutely say drop everything and go see this. I just thought it was kind of like that's a nice B movie, not like a B movie, like a Plan 9 from Outer Space, but like if you were on a grading scale, I would just give it a B. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Brad? How would you grade this if you had to?
I think I liked it more than that. I'd probably give it like maybe an A minus. It's one of those movies where I really enjoyed it, and I would probably like put it on like in the background again while working or something like that. But like, it's not going to make, again, not going to make my top 10, but I was still fairly impressed and surprised by its quality.
All right, and then you and I also watched a film called The Vast of Night, which I don't know about you, but I'll go first for this one, Brad. I loved this movie. I think this actually is going to be on my top 10 films of the year. This is the directorial debut of a guy named Andrew Patterson. And man, this is one of those films. It came out earlier this year. I mean, I think it's been on Amazon since like this summer or something. And I added it to my queue, when it came out, but I just kind of forgot about it and didn't really think much of it. And I was just going through a list of 2020 movies trying to catch up before the end of the year, and just sort of threw this on as a lark and was immediately just sucked into what this movie was. I didn't even really know what to expect, and I was so blown away by what happened here. And I don't want to like set the bar too high because it's a very low budget movie. I think it was made for like $700,000 or something. But I just thought, the creativity on display in this movie really blew me away. This was a fully mesmerizing experience for me. It's set in the 1950s in a small town in New Mexico, and it's about this young switchboard operator who starts fielding calls from people in nearby towns who are reporting mysterious sightings in the sky, and there's this electrical hum that suddenly appears. And so this switchboard operator and this local radio DJ team up to try to figure out what is going on with this audio frequency, and the entire town is basically in the local school gym watching their basketball team play. So it's really like the whole town is empty except for these two characters who are trying to figure out what's going on. And it's like, is it aliens? Is it not? What's happening? Are there military experiments? What's going on here? So I thought it was just a totally immersive, like terrific sci-fi mystery. But Brad, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. At first, it felt like it was going to be a little bit of like a slower burn, but as it went on, I just found myself getting caught up in how it creates suspense and tension and anticipation, and like it's such a wordy script, but it's done so well because everything that is said, like you hang on every word in many cases, because as the mystery builds and you start learning more about what people think is going on, and people who feel like they might have insight into this mysterious situation, whether it's a caller on the radio or a local, it just adds more and more layers of fascination to it. And because it's a low budget movie, it does this just by setting the tone with the right ambiance, with really moody lighting, or a fantastic score, and some really impressive camera work too. There's a long take, several long takes in this movie that I was impressed as hell, and really want to know how they pulled it off. If they actually did do full-on single takes, or if they stitched a couple takes together in some cases. But there's some really impressive stuff in this movie for a first feature. Like, I think this guy really has a future in front of him to become, a full-on like blockbuster filmmaker. And again, not to set the bar too high, but like I did get some like Spielberg Amblin vibes from it, but not to the point where it feels like that's what he was trying for necessarily, because it's much more subtle and less in your face than like something like Super 8. And it almost makes me wish that this was what J.J. Abrams did with Super 8 instead, because it's handled so well. And it presents it in an interesting way too, because it almost makes it like an episode of Twilight Zone. It's framed in this faux TV show bookend called Paradox Theater, as like this is just like an episode that you're watching on an old time 1950s television. And the vibe definitely of the movie captures that entirely. And it's just, it's a breeze to get through, even though it feels like it's slow to start with because it's dialogue heavy and whatnot. But once you get into it, it's a quick 90-minute watch, and it's very enjoyable.
The movie that I kept coming back to as a comparison point is Rian Johnson's Brick, because I felt like both films feature these characters who speak in this really heightened, stylized dialogue where it's almost like you have to parse what they're even saying. To like, you have to really lean in, and I had to watch the movie with closed captions on, which I watch most things with closed captions on anyway, but I would recommend doing that for people who may be turned off to this in the first 5 minutes or something. But yeah, I think it settles in very, very quickly, and I just love the way that it uses that dialogue, that stylization, to pull you into this world, and it almost like creates this alternate reality. And that's added to the whole framing device you mentioned. It sort of adds to that as well.
And it's no coincidence that the radio station is WOTW.
War of the Worlds, is that what the
indeed
supposed to be in a reference to? Yeah, referencing what that the classic Orson Welles reading of that. Jacob, I think you saw this at a film festival last year, didn't you?
Yeah, Chris and I both saw this at a film festival last year, and we're the only people on Earth who did not like it.
Yes.
Oh wow! Neither one of you liked it. Interesting. Nope. Okay.
I literally only once.
I love the opening tracking shot that Brad was talking about. That very long, it's like almost endless, where the camera just keeps going. It like goes through a stadium, and it goes down a street, and it goes through a parking lot. And when the movie started, I was like, "Holy shit, this is gonna be fucking amazing!" And then the minute the tracking shot stops, I was like, "Oh, never mind. I don't like this movie." And it's like, so like I think the director has a lot of promise. I'm sorry, I don't have his name in front of me right now, but I think I'm very excited to see what they do next, because they clearly have, the chops to make something compelling visually. But the minute that tracking shot ends, the movie lost me, and it lost me even more. Where like there's a scene where the two main characters go and see this like old woman, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this!"
I love that scene.
No, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's not a bad movie. I don't think it's like, "Oh, that was awful." I just, like Jacob said, we're in the minority here, and everyone raves about this, and I'm in the corner like, "What the hell is going on?" It's like, I'm just like, I feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit. I was like, "What is everyone seeing in this movie that I'm not?" But to each their own.
Wow.
Yeah, I like it more than Chris, I think. It peaks for me an early phone call that one character takes where a man reflects on his experiences in the military and what he may or may not have experienced. And I thought, ooh, this is good. This is a fascinating use of audio, of keeping a character off screen, of building a mystery. And I think that mystery is built up to be really exciting, and then it fails to deliver on that mystery on every possible level.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. I would just recommend.
So it sounds like the only thing we can do is have me watch it and break the tie on this, whether The Vast of Night is good or not.
I would.
You should definitely see it. There's so much promise here, and some people like it. You should absolutely watch The Vast of Night. Chris and I are in the vast minority, guys. This was a huge hit. I think it was South by Southwest last year, right, Chris?
No, it's Fantastic Fest.
Oh, it's Fantastic Fest. Okay. And like people raved about it. It like won a lot of acclaim, and Amazon I think picked it up like before it was at the festival. They were really into it. Amazon really hyped it up. They made a Mondo poster for it at the festival, which they only do for movies that like the people involved feel really good about. I mean Chris and I are in a super minority. I can't emphasize that enough. About if Brad and Ben interested you at all, you should absolutely watch this. And then privately come to me and Chris if you agree with us. Yes.
No, that's fine. You can tell me if you hated it too. I just like Jacob. I felt like this was the most confident and maybe, I don't know about interesting, but the most confident directorial debut since I saw The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which is a movie that you and I both love. And I don't know, it felt, they're very different movies, but just the confidence behind the camera it shone through for me in a big way. So I really loved The Vast Night. It sounds like Brad did too. So yeah, I would be. I mean, if you listeners out there watch this movie, I would love for you guys to write in and just like let us know what you think about it. I'd love to know like if what the general consensus is from like audience members who weren't in a film festival environment and are just watching it and catching up with it now. So that is on Amazon Prime Video right now. Okay, so let's get into what I've been watching. I watched a film called Promising Young Woman, which I think Brad and Chris talked about not too long ago. I loved this movie. This was written and directed by Emerald Fennell, who I believe has directed some stuff, some episodes of Killing Eve. She may have actually been like the showrunner of season 2 of Killing Eve, but or at least a major creative force behind that season of the show. This movie stars Carey Mulligan, who I haven't seen in anything in a little while, and I thought she just absolutely killed it. I thought this is the best. Carey Mulligan had a run there in like the 20, probably 2008 to 2013, 2014 or something, where she seemed to be in everything and was very, very good in a lot of things. But I don't know if maybe she's still been doing stuff at that clip, but I just haven't seen it. But man, I felt like this was a really, really strong, if you want to call it a comeback performance. I don't think she's been gone that long, but just a really great reemergence of her as like a holy shit, this woman can act the hell out of whatever she's given. Bo Burnham is in this movie, and he's a really solid supporting player in this. It's just kind of wild to think that he directed 8th Grade and is like a well-known, comedy persona. And just thinking about him like as an actor, it's just so strange because I think this is the first thing I've seen him in maybe since he directed 8th Grade. But man, the cast is really solid in this. I mean, you guys have talked about it already, so I don't need to go into too much detail. But this is a movie that wants to push some buttons, and I think it just does. I don't know if there's a misstep in this entire movie. I think I need to research this more because I understand that there's some controversy about the ending, or at least some controversy about some of the things that happen in the movie. And I just thought everything worked really, really well for me. And I want to know why people are why some people are reacting negatively to this. But that's work that I have to do, obviously off mic. So yeah, I bring that up just to say that I think there are two camps for this film. And Brad and Chris, remind me where you guys fell on Promising Young Woman.
I really liked it, even though I think that it's a little bit muddled in its overall message. Like, I appreciate what it's trying to do, and like how bombastic it is in that approach, and like how strong it comes on in that way, and how in like the intensity and Carey Mulligan's menacing performance. But there's nothing controversial about the ending to me. It just seems like it's a little, I don't know, far-fetched to me.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Chris, what did you think about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same camp. I don't love this movie. This is another one where I don't hate it, but everyone around me is like, this is one of the best movies of the year. And I'm over here like, is it though? I think it's really well made. I think Carey Mulligan is great. I think the direction is great. But there's the way the third act unfolds. It's not that I'm unhappy with how it unfolds. It's that it's really hard to talk about because I can't.
It is, yeah.
I can't say what's wrong with it without giving away spoilers, but
yeah,
basically a series of things happen that are incredibly unlikely. And I'm all for suspension of disbelief. Movies don't have to be 100% realistic. And I know this film in particular is exists in this sort of like heightened reality, but there's this chain of events that happens, and it would take like a mind reader to predict all this stuff that happens, and it just really took me out of the movie because I was like, I was almost with it up until like the last like half hour, and then it lost me. But
interesting. Okay.
One thing I will say is that despite its shortcomings, there is a good chance that this movie, like I like this movie enough and love Carey Mulligan's performance and certain aspects of it that it still could end up being on my top 10 list. Because I think there are so many things in it that are so good despite the fact that it does have these shortcomings in its climax.
I mean, Chris, I totally understand what you're saying there. There's a moment or a sequence where it almost feels like Heath Ledger's Joker would have had to orchestrate everything like to that degree for all of this to play out. But I think I was just so sucked in and so on the movie's level at that point that I just didn't really care about like the logic and some of the things that went into that final domino pushing of the domino, which is something that I normally would get hung up on, but I think the movie just did such a great job of like pulling me into its wavelength that I was just like on board with it. So that movie comes out. It's called Promising Young Woman. It comes out, I think, in theaters on December 25th. So Christmas this year. I'm not sure when it's going to come out on streaming, but I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't recommend seeing any movie in any theater right now. But I would definitely recommend watching this movie just so you can sort of see what people are talking about and have your, create your own opinion about this one, because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about with this in the months to come. So let's see, what else did I watch? Oh, I caught up with Sofia Coppola's On the Rocks, which is streaming on Apple TV Plus right now. I thought this one was kind of a miss for me. This is the film with Bill Murray and Rashida Jones as a father and daughter who basically drive around New York and try to figure out whether the daughter's husband is having an affair. And Marlon Wayans plays the husband, and I just thought he was miscast. Like, what is Marlon Wayans doing in this movie? It's not like he's doing like scary movie level Marlon Wayans acting. It's just it kind of took me out of it. Like his very presence took me out of it a little bit. And then Bill Murray is like, he's supposed to be playing this sort of likable asshole, and he just went a little bit too far into the asshole portion for me to really engage with his performance on any sort of real level. Rashida Jones, I think she's great, but she just kind of in this movie doesn't really have that much to do. She just sort of follows Bill Murray around like a puppy dog, and I don't know, the whole film just kind of felt like more of an exercise than a story that needed to be told. It was like, I don't know, Sofia Coppola's, normally she's a pretty dynamic and I don't know what you would call her. I would just say a dynamic filmmaker. And this movie did not have that dynamism that I associate with her storytelling. It just sort of felt inert and kind of like disconnected in a way that, Lost in Translation, several of her other movies do not. And I just felt like it was almost like she was just completely out of touch, writing the script. Like, what are we talking about here? What is this movie about? This is it. This is what we're doing. So I don't know. It's a movie that I think had the potential to be a lot of fun, and the way that the tone is struck is not really that. And so I just struggled to get on this one's wavelength. I struggled to understand what it was that Sofia Coppola was trying to do, or the reason that she wanted to make this movie. So HT, I know I remember you talking about this one and not being thrilled with the ending, if I recall correctly, but how has On the Rocks sat with you in the time since you've seen it?
I think I'm a little bit warmer to it than you are. I wouldn't say that it's a complete miss. I do think it's a lot slighter than a lot of Sofia Coppola's other films. And I completely disagree with you about Bill Murray's performance. I think it's the saving grace of this movie, and I think he's fantastic, and it taps into his inherent charisma in a way that really works for the film. But as to like what it's about, I think it's something that is sort of reflective of both Sofia Coppola and Rashida Jones' own relationships with their more famous fathers, and like living in that shadow of their father, and how that affects and can negatively affect them. So I do think that there's more to this movie than like what you brought away from it. But I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorite Sofia Coppola films, but it's not nearly as bad as you're making it out to be.
All right, fair enough. Okay, another movie that's on Apple TV Plus is called Wolfwalkers. This is an animated movie that actually I think you just wrote about in an edition of our quarantine stream column. Before I throw this one over to you, I will just say that I really enjoyed this movie. I thought the animation style, it comes from this this company called Cartoon Saloon. I thought the animation style on this was just gorgeous to look at. I mean, the talk about stylization, like the character designs and the production designs of the world in this movie, which is like this, I think 1600s Ireland, like this sort of, this castle and city environment, and then the woods that are right outside of it. I thought it was all just so unique, and like looking at a painting, we talked a lot about Soul and how that movie looks so photoreal, and this movie is like the complete opposite of that, and just shows how like the wide range of animation styles, and how different types of approaches can be equally effective in the stories that they're trying to tell. This one I just thought was a really, really wonderful mix of this sort of like mythology and it's basically about this girl who becomes a wolf walker, who is this, she can, when she goes to sleep, she takes the form of a wolf essentially, and her father, who plays this wolf hunter, who is tasked by the Lord Protector of this castle kingdom to wipe out all of the wolves from the nearby forest, and the conflict that arises there. And it's really like this father-daughter story, wrapped up in this genre framework. And I thought it was really, really effective. And I just love the melding of the visual style that they chose with this specific type of, like ancient Celtic-esque material. So, HT, I have not had a chance to read your quarantine stream piece, but from the headline of that piece, it sounds like you really enjoyed this one too, right?
Oh yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites of the year. And not only did I write a quarantine stream about it, I wrote a glowing review for it too, which you can read on slashfilm.com. But Wolfwalkers is just a stunning, astonishing piece of work. And I have loved everything that Cartoon Saloon has done so far. Films like Song of the Sea, The Secret of Kells, The Breadwinner. And I feel like Wolfwalkers is a sort of culmination of all of the works, the films that they've done so far, and also they're most commercial, most accessible, because it has a more typical sort of adventure story while having a villain. It's the first time that one of their films has a villain too, and it like sort of toes that line between art house and entertainment in a way that's really, really exciting and fun to watch. And I think there's an added layer to this movie too, and especially as Cartoon Saloon being one of the last bastions of 2D hand-drawn animation, in that this movie is about sort of a disappearing culture, a disappearing tradition and myth, and how it's not exactly about trying to save it or retain it in a way, but that this disappearing thing, this element of the world, this last magic in the world, still exists somewhere, and it's sort of in the dark crevices of our world, in the deepest of the forests, and that it'll always exist. And it's kind of an ode to that disappearing tradition, as well as I feel like an ode to the disappearing tradition of hand-drawn animation. So I really love that it has that extra layer to it, and how, it just looks stunning. It's such a beautiful movie. And I've always, beat the drum for hand-drawn animation, but I think that this movie really elevates and transcends what we expect even of hand-drawn animation. There's this one sequence that is done when the main character sees like wolf vision, and it gives like this trippy sort of black light aesthetic to it that is almost synesthetic. It's really, really gorgeous. So if you want to, you can see me rave about Wolfwalkers on slashfilm.com, but I highly, highly recommend this movie.
I love that take, HT, the idea that it's about this vanishing, magic in the world, and also about like a commentary on the vanishing art of 2D animation. That's really great. I had not thought about that, but that I feel like you can absolutely make a case for that. Okay, so the last movie that I watched is a film on Netflix. It is a horror film called His House, and a horror film, I mean, I don't know. It's almost more of I don't know if we want to like open up this can of worms, but to me, it almost felt like a little bit more like a thriller instead of a straight up horror movie. But it definitely has horror film vibes. It's about this pair of refugees who flee South Sudan, and they come to the UK, and they live in this really small, I guess, town on the outskirts of London, and they're basically given they're given a house to stay in and told, okay, you can't have any friends over, you can't play basketball in the street, you can't make any noise, you can't do it. They have like this huge list of restrictions because they're sort of on this like I don't know what the word would be, but like a period where their case is going to be heard, and they're on like probation almost, like they have to make a good impact on society, and they'll be able to stay in this area, and so they have one of the things that they're given is this house, and they're told that they're not allowed to leave this house. Like, I mean, they can leave to go to work or to whatever, but they can't move. They have to essentially be kept in one place so the government can sort of keep tabs on them and be able to check in whenever they need to and things like that. And of course, this house ends up being haunted, and it's not just like any haunted house movie. It's that they bring the haunting with them because of this trauma that they experienced or went through or caused in their own pasts. So there are these bodies that are like in the walls and who emerge when the lights are off, and who sort of like haunt them within this new environment that they're in. And I just thought it was a really smart movie, a really a kind of a quiet horror movie. There's not like a ton of jump scares or anything like that. I think it's a film that makes you think about the when you read in headlines about refugees and all that kind of stuff, you or I anyway, like intellectually I understand what's happening, but like it's been a while since I've seen a movie that sort of taps into what that experience is like for people on a ground level, on a personal level, and just thinking about these restrictions that they face, or the restrictions that they have to adhere to, or else they might get deported, and like what that means for their lives, and like how strict those restrictions actually are, and then this idea of this trauma that they've brought with them. And there's a reveal that happens I don't know, midway through this movie or something, that recontextualizes everything that you've seen so far, that I thought was just super, super effective, and will probably be one of the moments that I argue for in our best moments of 2020 list. So I'm curious, has anybody else here seen His House yet? I think Jacob and Chris, especially as like the horror guys on this podcast, I think this would be right up your alley.
Yeah, I've seen. I actually wrote about it in my last streaming column. Yeah, it's great. It has this empathy to it that you don't really get in horror movies that often, and that really impressed me, just how, like, I don't want to say kind the movie is, because it's it's a scary movie and there's really dark things that happen in the movie, but there's a lot in this movie about second chances and forgiveness and understanding, and that really impressed me. Just the way that's handled, because it's handled in this really, I guess, mature way is how I'm putting it. Like, yeah. I love horror movies. I'm all about horror movies, but a lot of horror movies don't have these sort of things on their mind. So when one comes along that does something like this, I was like, oh, holy shit, this is like, it's a horror movie with something to say, which doesn't happen as often as I would like it. So I really think this is a great movie. I feel like this is one of those movies that, like, it went to Netflix and no one noticed it. I wish, like, it got more of a push. I wish more people talked about it. And, so I highly recommend people check this out. Even if you're not a horror fan, I think you would find something meaningful in this movie.
Yeah, 100%. Jacob, have you seen this one yet?
It's on my catch-up list this week, fingers crossed. It slipped through the cracks a little bit, and I'm regretting it based on this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even heard of it really until a couple months ago when I think the Slash Filmcast reviewed it, like right when it came out at the end of October, and I didn't get a chance to listen to that full episode because I wanted to watch the movie for myself, and I just again was going through 2020 catch-up stuff and wasn't expecting much from this, but was kind of blown away by it. And I think the one other thing that I'll say about it is that like a lot of the movie just takes place in this house, and it kind of is like a little bit of a shabby, rundown house. But I was very impressed with the visual tricks and some of the production design elements of the movie, where it expands the scope of the movie in dream sequences and stuff like that in really, really interesting ways that sort of open the movie up from just this little claustrophobic, small sort of one location type of movie. And there's this one really, really gorgeous shot where a character is like eating a meal, and the camera pulls back and reveals that the environment that he's in is completely changed. And I just thought that was like a really standout moment. So the film is called His House. It is streaming on Netflix right now. And that is all that I've been watching. So Jacob and HT, both of you had a chance to see The Personal History of David Copperfield. I know this is a movie that Chris liked a lot. So what did you guys think about it? Jacob, let's start with you.
Yeah, this is terrific. One issue I have with a lot of the way we talk about Charles Dickens is that I think the way he's taught in schools, the way a lot of Americans in particular know about him, they think of him as stodgy, and a lot of the movies that are based on his work are stodgy. And they ignore the fact that Dickens, as a writer, is full of wit and whimsy and great character names and bizarre humor and like great gags, but who is also very political, who wrote these really entertaining, often entertaining tragic stories, because he had an eye for actually trying to make civil action and make things change in the England of his time, the 1800s. And this combination of politics and drama and wacky, weird character comedy often gets really stripped down into like, stagey BS in lots of Dickens adaptations. And Armando Iannucci, the director here, who best known for, shows like Veep and movies like Death of Stalin, leans very heavily on Charles Dickens' comedy and how really funny he is and how wild his characters are and how they all have such great names. I mean, if you look at the list of character names here, they're just absolutely incredible. Mr. Macabre, Edward Murdstone, Peggotty, Betsy Trotwood, just names that lodge in your brain. Uriah Heep, names that have become, literary archetypes they lodge in you so deeply that they continue to be referenced, 150, 170 years later after this book was published. Anyway, I'm a big fan of this book. I think it's my favorite Charles Dickens book. I read it all 1,000+ pages of it back in the day. And this movie is under 2 hours long. It manages to feel like a pretty comprehensive adaptation with a few noteworthy cuts, running at full speed. It manages to be extremely fast-paced without feeling rushed. And it reminds me of my memories of the book more than the book itself, whereas I can't tell you every single thing that happened in the 1,000-page plus of that novel, but all exists in this whirlwind of memories and moments. And this adaptation is that. It's a whirlwind of moments. It's the main character played by Dev Patel, the wonderful Dev Patel, having a really difficult life full of ups and downs, and learning that, if you don't have a family, you got to make your own. And real wealth is the community you build around yourself. I think this is probably my favorite Charles Dickens movie ever. HT, what do you think about this one?
Oh, I don't know if I can add to anything after you so eloquently just gushed about it, because I love The Personal History of David Copperfield. And David Copperfield is not actually one of the Dickens books that I've read. I've only read, I think, Great Expectations, and of course Christmas Carol. So going into this movie, I had forgotten for some reason that this was a Charles Dickens book, and had only remembered that it was Armando Iannucci and Dev Patel starring in it. So 5 minutes into this movie, I was like, wow, this movie is really Dickensian. And then I realized the truth, and I was like, wow, either I'm very smart or very dumb, because Armando Iannucci manages to capture that Dickensian spirit so much, despite taking some creative liberties in his depiction of the story. But I actually had expected almost for Iannucci, who has been mostly a satirical, like a political satirist, to take even more creative liberties. But he felt this is probably the most sincere and straightforward I've ever seen Iannucci be. And he just it's like a big love letter to Charles Dickens and all of his works, and it's his whimsy and his wit, and it's just such a wonderful movie to watch. I absolutely loved every minute of it. I loved watching Dev Patel, who is fantastic in it. I love all the character actors who are in this. I did not know that Peter Capaldi was in this until he popped up, and I was very excited because like right before I was watching this movie, I'd been watching Peter Capaldi fan videos, Doctor Who, and I was like, wow, he's here. So, and everyone is just so fantastic in this movie, and it's such a delight. I absolutely adore the personal history of David Copperfield.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cast list, and like, if I had to pick a favorite character, I don't know if I could. Like, I mean, there's a running bit where David Copperfield himself is based on Charles Dickens. It's the closest thing Dickens ever wrote to an autobiography. He fictionalized large portions of his life, people he knew, splintered portions of himself out in the characters. And there's a running thing where David Copperfield, Dev Patel's character, will write down people's names and like something they say, and he has his box full of like memories of people he's met. And this movie is such a beautiful portrait of the people we know and why they matter, and why the found family that he has is so important. And I'm looking for this list, like, I don't know if I love Peter Capaldi's Mr. Macabre more than I love Hugh Laurie's Mr. Dick, or if I love Tilda Swinton's Betsy Trotwood more than like someone else. But it's just this movie filled me with so much joy, and it's a movie in a year where we were all isolated so much and we're striving for connection. David Copperfield, the book and the movie, understand that are about connection and about how we build these connections over the course of a lifetime and how they inform us and why they matter. And it's a really terrific movie. And I rented it on Amazon. I'm not sure if it's streaming anywhere. It was worth the $5.99 on Amazon, and I recommend it for everybody on this podcast before we do our end of the year discussions.
And one more thing I want to add is that, from my understanding of David Copperfield, it's a morality play, which means that Charles Dickens, in writing this, meant to create a character who went through several trials and tribulations, and would learn towards the end of how to live by great morals and everything like that. And that is something that's a little bit more on the dated side, especially in English literature. But I feel like personal history manages to bring that morality play aspect forward and not make it feel as stilted as you would think, as the perspective of Dickens' works are. And it feels like something really fresh and really refreshing.
Yeah. In the meantime, we need. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
No, go ahead.
I was going to make a final joke for me and HT, and only people have seen this movie only, but it makes me want to put a sign in my front yard demanding that donkeys stay away.
Is that a Doctor Who reference?
No, it's a David Copperfield reference.
Okay, all right. HT, you mentioned Peter Capaldi, and just speaking of Doctor Who actors, Matt Smith is one of the supporting people in his house, so maybe that will be a little bit of extra convincing that you might need to check that film out. So
where is his house streaming again?
It's on Netflix.
Okay, check it out.
All right, Jacob, let's move to you. What have you been watching?
I'll try to go a little rapid fire because it's movies we talked about a lot already. I finally caught up with David Fincher's Mank, finally. I'm on Team Mink. This is a very specific movie for very specific tastes. It's by far the most inaccessible film David Fincher has ever made. There's not a popular bone in this film structure. It is just, do you like 1930s Hollywood stories? Do you like 1930s politics in the United States? And most importantly, do you like tales about how writing deadlines are terrifying? If all those things are true for you, Mank is your movie. I really, really dug this. But it also is inaccessible. I had to literally pause it halfway through. My wife had to literally ask me, I don't know what the hell is going on. Can you tell me what the hell is going on? It is not forgiving for people who do not know the names and personalities of early classic Hollywood. And that's David Fincher's prerogative as a director, what he chooses to think is important for you to know and what not to know. But I was really won over by this film. And even though it plays fast and loose with history in many ways, like the real Herman J. Mankiewicz did not have certain qualms about certain things that he does in this movie. But the whole thing works so successfully as a portrait of a time and a place and of a Hollywood that we glamorize too much and gets really taken to task here. I really like Mank. That's it. That's it for Mank. Everyone else has seen it.
All right, so you're Team Mank. Are you Team Run?
I am Team Run. This is a new film from the director of Searching, Anish Chaganty, and Run is very good. I know people have issues with third act, and I do a little bit too. I do think it peters out a little bit. But for a film that is borrowing a lot of familiar elements and is leaning very heavily on thriller tropes we've seen before, it manages to feel fresh for a number of reasons. One, because Kira Allen is the wheelchair-using protagonist who slowly learns that her mother is not as well-meaning as she thought she was, like in the understatement of a century. She's terrific, and she lends such a physicality to the performance, as well as just being a damn good actress. And the movie's smart. Like, so many thrillers are undone because you think, oh, if somebody had said something here, the entire plot falls apart. Run is ahead of you there. The characters all do the right thing. They're just up against a villain and a situation that is also ahead of them. And we'll talk about this more in our end of the year conversations, because I think Run is very, very smart with how it treats the supporting cast and the decisions they make. Anyway, what's next on my list here, Ben? You have I'm several tabs away from it.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog, yes, up there with Mank and Run. No, but seriously.
No, Jacob, I want you to go 5 minutes on Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay, Sonic the Hedgehog by director Jeff Fowler. I am not a Sonic fan. I'm a Mario kid. I grew up with Nintendo. I think Sonic games are generally actively bad, so I have no nostalgia for Sonic the Hedgehog like so many people do. But Sonic the Hedgehog is a totally fine movie. It is not made for me. It's made for families. It's made for children. And it's made with positivity. There's like none of the cynical crap I associate with like Alvin and the Chipmunks or other, live action CGI hybrids. Like the movie feels it comes from a really honest, personal, loving place. Sonic the Hedgehog, voiced by Ben Schwartz from Parks and Recreation and other great comedies. He's not phoning it in. He's giving a full-on performance to Sonic, and he's sweet and fun and lovable and just annoying enough that you understand why characters would reject him at first, but you come around on him. And I think Jim Carrey here as the villain, as Dr. Robotnik, he's just doing 90s Jim Carrey. He's retreated into his old self. I didn't know I wanted that until this. I was really, really thrilled to see Jim Carrey being a wild and wacky guy he used to be, as opposed to the more serious actor he's been proven he could be, but also kind of been in that area for a little too long now. And if 20 years from now, if the world still exists, and a guy in his mid-20s comes to me and said, I love Sonic the Hedgehog, I watched as a kid, it's a nostalgia favorite, I wouldn't be mad, because there's so much crap, there's so much egregious, cynical crap from movies like this that take a beloved character, make him CGI, and put him a bunch of these live-action actors. And Sonic does not have any of those tropes. It is a genuinely nice, warm, funny, totally pleasant thing. And I'm not mad at Sonic in any way whatsoever for existing, whereas I'm mad at Alvin and the Chipmunks for existing. All right, what's that, 5 minutes, HD?
That's
Yes.
sounds close enough. Yeah.
Has anyone else here seen Sonic? Am I crazy?
Yes, you're crazy. Sonic the Hedgehog it's not good. It's just not good. We're talking about a character whose ability is to like speed like crazy, as fast as he can. It is so insanely fast, and he spends almost the entire movie in a truck with James Marsden. Like you're gonna put Sonic inside of a truck for almost this entire movie. It doesn't make any damn sense. And as much as I love 90s over the top zany Jim Carrey, it just doesn't work here. And as much as I love Ben Schwartz and how much he dedicated to this performance as Sonic the Hedgehog, does great vocal work here. It does not work for me on any level whatsoever. It's just as messy as any of those live action animation hybrids, Alvin and the Chipmunks, or whatever any of the other ones are. It's just a total mess and nightmare to me.
I'm not going to go too hard to bat for Sonic the Hedgehog, because it's Sonic the Hedgehog and I have more movies to talk about. But a character who can go as fast as you want, so you can travel across the entire country in like a moment if you wanted to, not being able to go somewhere because he lacks direction. He's in the truck, Brad, because he can go as fast as he wants, but doesn't know where to go.
Boo! I haven't seen this movie, but boo.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
Jacob,
Anyway.
I saw this movie, and I think it's like fine to not great, but I don't think you're wrong.
I'm not wrong either. Anyway, we'll talk about Sonic more in the future. Not for Best of the Year, but I'll be bringing a few moments from this movie into our conversation for none of them will make the list of our best moments of the year, but I'm just going to bring a few of them up.
Best of luck, Jacob. All right, let's talk about Sound of Metal.
A movie that will make my best of the year list and will have moments on our best moments of the year list. Sound of Metal from Darius Marder. We talked about this before already. This is Riz Ahmed as a heavy metal drummer who loses his hearing, and it is a powerful, like, devastating to watch movie. Riz Ahmed probably gives the best lead performance of the year. I'm also very won over by Paul Ratchie, who plays the leader of a household of deaf people. And he Paul Ratchie himself is not deaf, but he is a child of deaf parents. He's fluent in sign language, and he gives this incredibly brutal, real, heartbreaking performance as a man who's dedicated himself to trying to teach people who have lost their hearing that they are, as viable as anybody else. And him and Riz Ahmed have so many incredible scenes together. This is an amazing movie. Streamed on Amazon. We talked about it a lot already on this show. I don't need to double down on what everybody else has already said, but Sound of Metal is one of the best films of the year. It's the best acted film of the year. Watch it loud. Turn up your sound, because the way it uses noise and sound and the way it chooses not to use it is stunning. It's an incredible film. Sound of Metal, Amazon. Watch it before we talk about it at length in our end of the year stuff.
Yes.
End of the year stuff as well. Boy State, documentary we talked about a few weeks ago about the assembly of 17-year-old boys in the Texas Capitol to roleplay government. It is a frustrating, hilarious, tragic, kind of amazing documentary. As somebody who lives in Texas, I nodded a lot with all the bullshit these kids spout as they play government and essentially parrot the things their parents have been saying. And of course, there is some hope in the darkness. I think the film is far more hopeful than people give it credit for, because one thing that's made very clear is that most of these kids are just kids. They're saying the same crap their parents have said, and hopefully when they grow up and move out of their homes, they'll find the world is much bigger, better, and different. And it's not an accident that several of the main subjects, the people who are taking the Boys to experiment far more seriously, are those with stuff to lose, with stuff they care about, namely the characters of Stephen and Renee, who are the non-white liberal characters who find themselves in positions of quote-unquote power in this simulated government. And they are two of the most inspiring characters of the year. And I really hope that people watch this movie and take away that Stephen and Renee are the future, not the most of the people on display in this movie. Although there is one character who is a terrifying villain, who reminds me so much of like young Karl Rove, young Stephen Miller, just the kind of next generation evil who needs to be stopped at all costs. And so it's a mixture of that. It's a mixture of realizing the next generation is bringing with it a lot of hope, but also a lot of like built-in, boiled-in, already fully aware evil. And I'm glad Boys State exists to highlight both these on film. It's really good. Stream on Apple. It's stream on Apple TV Plus if you have that subscription. Otherwise, seek it out. It is really good. Chris, I know you had hesitant about this. It will not make you feel better about the world, but I also do think that it's not as miserable as I think you're thinking it will be.
No, I will never ever watch this. Even based on what you're saying right now, just like my blood is boiling. So I'm not, even if it like has like you're saying that slight hopefulness, I'm not going to be able to handle all the other stuff. I'll just spend the whole movie like grinding my teeth to powder. So so thank you, Boy State, but no thank you.
All right, my last movie in my year-end catch-up. This may be more controversial than me liking Sonic, and this is the new film, not new film, but the film Shirley from Josephine Decker, starring Elizabeth Moss as writer Shirley Jackson. This film was a big hit at Sundance. It was reviewed very positively on the site by Chris. I think Shirley is a big pile of bullshit. I think it's boring. I think it's camp, but unaware that it's camp. I think the performances are overwrought and bad, even by Michael Stuhlbarg, an actor who I've normally never said anything bad about. I think this is by far my most disliked, positively reviewed film of the year. It's on Hulu from Neon. Everybody else likes it. I found Shirley to be unbearable, and Elizabeth Moss is much better in Invisible Man. That's my extremely controversial Sonic-adjacent take for possibly worse things to on this podcast today.
Well, I have not seen Shirley yet, but I can just hear the disbelief in Chris, who I feel like is reeling from that take right now.
It's in sharp contrast, this is currently number 4 on my top 10 of the year. So Jacob and I are on very different ends of we're on different pages here, but I definitely could see why some people would not like this movie, because it's very abstract and very I don't know. I would definitely not be surprised if other people shared Jacob's opinion of this movie, because I know it's not for everyone, but I personally think it's great.
Well, that's streaming on.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. I guess the intention of trying to make a movie about Shirley Jackson by making a Shirley Jackson story making a Shirley Jackson movie about Shirley Jackson that feels like a Shirley Jackson story. I guess the intent here, and sure, but I've read a fair amount of Shirley Jackson, and I'm familiar with her life, and it's so weird that I'm willing to give Mank a pass for how it changes Herman J. Mankiewicz's life, because at least it makes him a more heroic figure, whereas in real life Shirley Jackson had 4 kids and was a functioning person, and we kind of presents her as being an absolute psychopath lunatic who can't get out of bed, and for some reason that rubbed me the wrong way initially before the filmmaking bothered me. So I don't know. Where do we draw the line on how you can change real life figures for films? I do not. That's a conversation not ready to have right now, but I'm aware of my hypocrisy there. So I'm going to put it out there.
Interesting. Well, Shirley is streaming on Hulu right now, so if you want to dive in and see where you fall, feel free to do that. And then Jacob, you also have been catching up on some TV as well.
Oh yeah, I've gone on for too long, but I've been watching Evil. I finished the first season of Evil on Netflix. This is a CBS procedural, and it's almost like Law and Order watched Hannibal and said, "Why not a little bit of that?" And the gist is a sort of an X-Files Law and Order setup. It's a priest in training, played by Mike Coulter from Luke Cage, teams up with a blue-collar, tech expert, and a psychologist, a criminal psychologist, to investigate cases for the Catholic Church. Like they say, this person claims to be possessed. Are they actually possessed, or is it a psychological issue? Is this house is haunted? Is it actually haunted, or are the pipes rusty? And each episode stands alone. There's its own individual case that ultimately builds over the season to be like, sort of serialized, but also standalone, a very X-Files-esque setup in both, initial setup, but also in how it builds mythology episodes and Monster of the Week episodes. And it's really nicely shot. It's very creepy. It's full of abstract, bizarro imagery. Really amazing practical monsters. Lots of latex and gooiness. Lots of bloodletting. At the same time, it manages to be a horror show, but also a procedural that my mom would watch and enjoy. It walks a very fine line. It made me realize that there's nothing wrong with like a CBS procedural. They're just typically bad. But there's something very comforting about a show like Law and Order or ER or X-Files that delivers, a traditional network TV feel, but it's just spicy and weird enough to feel completely different. So Evil, it's streaming on Netflix right now. Season 2 is in production for CBS, hopefully next year. I think Evil is really good, and it was a really, really excellent way to decompress after watching movies for a year and catch up.
All right. Chris, let's go to you. What have you been watching?
Okay. I rewatched Tenet because Tenet is now on digital and Blu-ray and 4K and so on. And I know Christopher Nolan would throw his cup of tea in my face for saying this, but I think Tenet plays a little bit better at home than it did in the theater. At least for me. I saw Tenet at a screening. It was a very socially distanced screening. I had to keep my mask on the entire movie, and I'm not knocking mask wearing. Mask wearing is very important, and if more people would realize that, we wouldn't be where we are right now. That said, the entire time I was sitting in the theater, I just kept thinking, I'm wearing a mask on my face. Like I could not tune out the fabric over my face as I was watching the movie. And then, there's that problem that people have been talking about for a long time with Nolan movies where his dialogue is very muffled. And I've never really had a problem with it until this movie. Especially the opening prologue scene where every character just sounds like they're going like, and it's like, it just goes on and on. So watching it at home with the subtitles on, without wearing a mask, I was like, I enjoy this a little bit more. That said, I still think it's one of his weakest movies. It doesn't really feel like it's about anything. Like it just feels like he's just showing off his cool, tricks, and that's fine. He's very good at that stuff. I like Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, and this film has some great action sequences in it, but it feels like none of the characters matter at all. Like they're just there, and they only exist so Christopher Nolan can stage some cool stuff. So I don't hate Tenet, but it's definitely my least favorite Christopher Nolan movie. Moving on, complete opposite. I my wife and I were looking for a Christmas movie to watch that wasn't too Christmassy. So we watched While You Were Sleeping, because that's on Disney Plus right now. And I had actually never seen it. And man, what a charming movie that is.
Is this the Sandra Bullock, Bill Pullman movie?
Yes, this is where she plays she works at the L, and she falls in love. She falls in love with like Peter Gallagher. He's one of the people she rides the L every day, but she doesn't know who he is. She's just like attracted to him, and he gets mugged and he falls on the tracks and he gets knocked out, and she saves him from getting hit by a train. And through a whole comedy of errors, she goes to the hospital with him, and she ends up getting mistaken for his fiance. And rather than a normal scenario where someone would say, "Oh no, I'm not his fiance," she goes along and she plays along with it, and she has to pretend she's his fiance. But then his brother shows up, played by Bill Pullman, and she falls in love with him, and so on. And it's very unrealistic, but man, it is a charming little movie. I really enjoyed watching this movie.
It's set around Christmas time?
Yeah, for most of the movies set during Christmas time. And like I said, it's not overly Christmassy, so that's kind of why we were in the mood for. But it's funny and it's sweet. Sandra Bullock is good. Bill Pullman is good. Just a fun movie. So after that ended, my wife was like, "Man, I really want to watch more Sandra Bullock movies." And I was like, "Well, have you ever seen Speed?" And she said, "No." And I was like, "Oh boy, you're in for a treat." So I put Speed on, and man, let me tell you, it's really fun to watch Speed with someone who has never seen Speed before, because my wife was just like losing her goddamn mind in this movie because so much of Speed, pretty much all of Speed is practical. Like, yeah, they use miniatures and tiny digital touches here and there, but a lot of that movie is done with real action, real sets, real buses, and you can tell that by watching it. And that movie is just nonstop. It just never lets up. And I just had so much fun watching this with my wife, because she was just like, every time something cool happened, she was like, "Oh my God." It was like, there's that scene where they're on the freeway and the bus has to jump this gap. And as soon as the bus went airborne, she was just like, "Holy shit." She was like losing her friggin' mind. And I was like, this is why movies are magic, to watch people just be enthralled and be excited by, movies that can do stuff like this. So Speed, good movie, guys.
Is that streaming anywhere, Chris, or did you watch like a copy that you owned?
Yeah, I have it on Blu-ray.
Okay.
So While You Were Sleeping is on Disney Plus, but Speed, I don't think it's streaming anywhere. So we watched that. Another movie on Disney Plus is The Santa Claus, the Tim Allen movie, which I hadn't seen since I was a kid, and it's fine. It's not offensively bad. It is what it is. I will say, the kid actor in this movie who plays Tim Allen's son is like the king of annoying kid actors. Like, I really wanted him to shut the hell up. Like, he spends the whole movie being like, "Dad, why can't we get in the sleigh?" And it's like, oh man, this child, I don't like him. So Santa Claus.
David Krumholtz is amazing in that movie.
He's great as the very sarcastic elf. He's very good.
Santa Claus, the claws.
For a Disney movie, it's surprisingly edgy.
It is. I mean, yeah, the whole premise is literally Tim Allen kills Santa Claus and has to become Santa Claus. So,
and then there's that whole scene where he loses custody of his child.
Right,
because trial.
Yeah, and they have to bring the kid to a psychiatrist because they think the kid is insane because he won't shut up about the North Pole. So yeah, it is surprisingly bleak for a family Disney movie set at Christmas starring Tim Allen. So it gets points for that. But boy, I did not like that boy. I think his character's name is Charlie, and I wanted Charlie
Chris,
to.
I need you to watch the sequels and report back, because they will ruin you. They will completely destroy your existence as a human being. They're very bad.
All right, now I have to watch them.
But part 3, Chris, is a Back to the Future Part 2 situation where they travel back to the first film. And
oh wow!
Yeah, is it really? I've never seen the third one.
Wow, I've never seen. I just realized I never saw the third one.
They're really bad.
The second one a lot.
It's a really bad movie, but it is a Back to the Future 2 setup. And anytime a movie pulls a Back to the Future 2 setup, whether it be Back to the Future 2 itself or Endgame or anything like that, I have to point it out. Because it's such a bizarre thing.
Now I'm very curious to watch that. Now I might actually have to do it. I'll probably get very drunk before I sit down and watch it.
As someone who loves Back to the Future, I've never been able to bring myself to watch the third movie, just because looking at Martin Short as Jack Frost makes me want to throw myself out of a window.
Yeah, he's Jack Frost.
He's terrible. He's so bad, Brad and Ben and HD. Martin Short's performance in Santa Claus 3 is what happens when you cast somebody who's a legend, but a legend who needs some direction, but you're too much of a coward to tell him anything.
Oh boy. Well, Chris, you got 2 other movies on deck here. What else have you been watching?
Right. So keeping with the Christmas theme, I rewatched Scrooge, the Bill Murray one, and I love that movie. I do think it's a little uneven, and after I watched it, I read up on it, and I had never realized this, but Bill Murray apparently just like hates that fucking movie. Like all the interviews with him are just like, oh, I hated making that. I hated working with Richard Donner. There was a ton of scenes that got cut out, so. He's not a fan of it. I still like it. I do think parts of it don't work very well. I really like Carol Kane as an actress, but her entire sequence where she's the ghost of Christmas Present, she's dialed up to like 11, and it's just a little too much. That said,
Santa Claus 3.
That said, what I really love about Scrooge is how unapologetically like creepy it is. Like it's creepier than most like horror movies. Like there's this shot, as a kid, it fucking terrified me, and I still think it's really creepy. There's this part where Bill Murray ends up in like the sewer, and he finds this character he met earlier, this homeless guy. His name is Herman. He's played by Michael J. Pollard, and he's like in the sewer. Herman's in the sewer, and he's frozen. He's dead. He died of exposure basically, and he's frozen solid. And he has this like smile on his face, and it's like the way Richard Donner shoots that is like creepier than most creepy scenes in legitimate horror movies. And like even now when I watch it, I'm just like, ugh, this is upsetting. So I really appreciate how just it really leans into the whole ghost element of it, which is, you know, when I was a kid, I was really into A Christmas Carol because it was about ghosts. That's what really excited me most about that story. So I really like that this movie is like, yeah, we're going to play out the fact that this is a ghost story. So I think that's really cool. And then finally, another Disney Plus movie, but not a Christmas movie, is Big. They just added this to Disney Plus, the famous Penny Marshall, Tom Hanks movie. And this is another movie I hadn't seen since I was a kid. And man, this holds up. It's a charming little film. I do think it has a few problems. I do think the script kind of like forgets about a lot of characters, and it takes a lot of easy ways out where he's like, he just manages to land this job at this like company that makes toys like very easily. And I know that's sort of like they play it up as like a comedy thing, like, oh, it's silly that he got that job, but it's just a little too silly. I also think it's really, really weird, and I've always thought this, that he has sex with Elizabeth Perkins' character, because, you know, even though it's Tom Hanks, he's still supposed to be a kid, and he's like, I think he's like 13, and that's really kind of gross. But Tom Hanks, man, you know, if he wasn't in this movie, it would not work. He's the reason it works as well as it does, because he's just so goddamn good in this. And this is another movie that isn't afraid to like be creepy from time to time. Like there's that when Tom Hanks first the kid finds that the Zoltar machine on it's like at the carnival, but it's like at the dead end of the carnival, right by the waterfront. And it's in the shadows, and the way Penny Marshall shoots that is like so wonderfully spooky. And then there's that shot where it's like, oh, the machine's unplugged, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I wish Penny Marshall had like made like a horror movie, because that one shot of the machine in the dark on the pier proves that like she really could have like shot something scary if she had wanted to, but she never did. But there you have it. Big. Thank you.
All right, and that's on Disney Plus. Brad, let's go to you. What have you been watching?
I have been watching Ammonite, but this is part of my 2020 year-end catch-up. It's available, I think, on premium VOD right now. If not, maybe the lower-priced rental and in limited theaters. So this is a period romance that is inspired by a real-life British paleontologist named Mary Anning, played by Kate Winslet. And so it's set in the 1840s. She's this, I didn't know this about her, but she's this fairly famous figure among paleontologists, self-taught, very well known for unearthing various skeletons and whatnot. But this movie finds her kind of towards the end of her career, where she's not very prominent anymore. She kind of keeps to herself and still lives on this very dreary, cold beachside, still looking for skeletons and whatnot, runs a little shop with her ailing mother. And then an aspiring paleontologist comes to town with his wife, played by Saoirse Ronan. And then he suddenly has to leave away and leaves his wife under the care of Kate Winslet's character. And as the two spend time together, they go from being kind of adverse to each other to striking up this romance with each other. And it's a well-acted movie for sure. Saoirse Ronan and Kate Winslet are great on their own, but I didn't find much of any real passion or chemistry between them as lovers. And then aside from that, overall, the movie just suffers from being released a year after Portrait of a Lady on Fire, because it essentially tells the same story just with a couple different characters, and it's far less vibrant, much more dreary, very cold, and I just found myself not really getting into it very much. And it really seems like it kind of shoots for the moon when it comes to making these very intimate, love scenes between Saoirse Ronan and Kate Winslet. But I just found myself not really being like overwhelmed by their romance or passion for each other. So Ammonite's not all that great, kind of disappointing.
That's a bummer. All right, what else?
I've also been watching some television. I recently finished The Queen's Gambit. I don't remember. Has anybody else talked about The Queen's Gambit on here yet?
I don't think we have addressed it, even though it was like evidently one of the biggest shows of the year. Like, people seem to love this show, but I haven't watched any of it. I don't remember anybody else talking about it.
That's what I thought.
My roommate watched it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so everyone's been ranting and raving about the show, and let me tell you, it is fucking great. It's so fantastic. It's not to sound cheesy or basic, but like it's one of those stories that yes, it's about chess and this girl who becomes very good at it and climbs the ranks of being a chess master and playing against some of the best in the world. But obviously, it's about so much more than chess. I said chess. It's chess, and it's a very character-driven piece. Anya Taylor-Joy is incredible in this lead role. She's so good. It makes me just want to keep seeing her do more and more, and hopefully she doesn't mess with nonsense like New Mutants anymore. There's a great supporting cast in here as well. His name escapes me right now, but the guy who played Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter is in it as a fantastic character. Thomas Brody Sangster, who is the Liam Neeson's kid from Love Actually, was also in Game of Thrones. He plays this kind of like hipster-esque character who's like meant to be like oddly like sexy. He's like almost like a cowboy hipster, and it's such a weird role for him, but it works so well. And so it's I haven't even said what the show is about. I'm sure a lot of you know, but it's essentially follows this young orphan girl who was orphaned due to a very tragic circumstance, and she grows up in this private orphanage school and starts learning chess by playing with this janitor who is constantly playing with him against himself in the basement. And as she learns the game, it's clear like she's able to focus on it at night and play games in her head and figure things out. And so she learns very quickly and becomes very good. And you follow her as she grows up and has this kind of troubled teenage life. She gets adopted, starts carving her own path and figuring things out. And it's just watching her as a character evolve. And the way that they make chess so dramatic, even though it's something that's not necessarily visually exciting, just the way that Scott Frank makes it play out is so enthralling and mesmerizing. My girlfriend and I, we slowly went through this show over like, I want to say it was like 2.5, maybe 3 weeks, and we wanted to keep watching it, but I was also just like savoring it too, because I didn't want to binge through it all so quickly, because it's only 7 episodes. And if Netflix is smart, they won't do any more with it than that. It tells a very complete story. They don't need to do like a second season or like try and capitalize on its popularity. But it's a fantastic show, and it makes me wish that it were, a movie, because it would definitely be on my top 10 list if that were the case. But even so, it's definitely some of the best TV of the year.
Awesome. What else have you been watching, Brad?
I've also watched. What else did I watch? The holiday movies that made us. So we talked about the primary version of the show on here before, which is The Movies That Made Us, which is this documentary-esque kind of show where they talk to various filmmakers about the making of famous movies, cultural touchstones like Die Hard, Home Alone, and whatnot. And we mostly enjoyed it, I think, for those of us that watched it, because it kind of it dug past more of the surface level featurette, glossy publicity kind of stuff you normally see, and talked about to people who worked on the crew, distanced from making it, and were actually able to dig into some of the controversy and drama and things that made the production difficult at times. And the holiday movies that made us doesn't do that quite so well. It does have some of the similar stories, but for some reason I don't remember the original version of the series being quite as obnoxious, because this one, it's edited in such a frenetic way that they're doing way too much cutting of completing people's sentences with lines from the movie, or quick cutting to the clips from the movies that match with what they're saying, or repeating clips for just small bite-sized phrases, and it makes it feel like it was cut together by somebody who's just all hopped up on Mountain Dew. It's all over the place, and that was very frustrating to me while watching these two installments. And so I don't know if I need to go back and see if that's how the original one was too, but this just feels much more crazy than that. But there's still interesting stories there. The Nightmare Before Christmas and Elf are the two movies that are in this. The Nightmare Before Christmas episode digs in a lot more to the drama that came from Tim Burton and his disagreements with certain choices for the movie, and his history with Disney and all that stuff. So that's interesting if you don't know it. And then Elf is less dramatic, and more just about how crazy it is that this movie actually got made, and just the steps and how little everyone working on it really knew what they were doing, especially when it comes to the producers and everything. And so I think that one's a little bit more fun and lighthearted. But it's the thing that makes this show suffer, I guess, is that they don't have interviews with people like Jon Favreau or Will Ferrell or Tim Burton or anything like that. So they have some good key people, but not everybody, and it kind of takes away from it a little bit, from being much more comprehensive than it otherwise could have been.
So that's the holiday movies that made us. That's on Netflix, right?
It is.
Okay.
And then I also I've continued my Friends catch up, if you will. I finished Friends season 2. And so this one was fun. I still really enjoy the show. I'm really, really glad that the first getting rid of Marcel, the monkey, was a great decision, because there was the one thing that I hated about early Friends. It just didn't make any sense to me. It felt like such a stupid, kitschy thing to have. I don't know if there are tons of fans out there who love Marcel. I'm sorry if that's the case, but no. But I will say, bringing him back for the Super Bowl episode, which was weird, of Friends, a 2-part episode, which has cameos from Jean-Claude Van Damme, Julia Roberts, Dan Castellaneta, Fred Willard, a weird assembly of people for this Super Bowl episode. And then you have Tom Selleck, who plays a key role in this season, as well as Courtney Cox's older boyfriend, which was interesting. And so, yeah, the series is really fun. It still has those moments where it gets a little too this is a network sitcom kind of zany thing. But, again, it comes down to just the chemistry of this cast and how well they work together. And so it's, I'm getting more interested in seeing the episodes where we start getting bigger guest stars, or, more guest stars, earlier on in their career. So, yeah, Friends, it's still pretty good.
And where are you watching that, Brad?
It's on HBO Max.
All right. HT, what have you been watching?
I finally watched Soul after all of you guys talked about it, so I won't speak too much on it, but you can also read my full thoughts on this new Pixar movie on slashfilm.com, which my review went up today. And this is the latest of the Pixar movies that I watched and thought, the people over at Pixar are really going through something, huh? And it's a really, again, gorgeous, ambitious, existential movie, and one that takes you in very unexpected directions.
Hey everybody, it's Ben. I just wanted to interrupt real quick to drop a spoiler warning for Soul. We're about to talk about some stuff that has not been revealed so far in the marketing. So if you'd like to skip this conversation and jump ahead to the rest of the podcast, you can go to the time code 1 hour and 41 minutes and 6 seconds. Okay, back to the show.
It starts off as this abstract exploration of after death and before life, and that's something that was really exciting and weird and intriguing. And then the second half, I don't know if I can go into spoilers by now, but I'm just gonna say it becomes a body swap comedy, which I did not expect at all, and I'm not really sure if I enjoyed that. I never really like comedies where the main character, which I'll go into this a little later, main character becomes like an animal and transforms into an animal. I never really enjoyed that trope of animated movies, and it's often something that is seen with characters of color too, which didn't slip by my notice either. So this was something that I felt like played into, maybe unintentionally, that idea of the Black character being hidden from like the focal point by transforming into an animal, which I did not really quite enjoy. But I really liked how ambitious and weird and just kind of soul searching that this movie was. And while I don't think it really finds all the answers that it means to, it does have that Pixar heart that I think keeps it from getting a little bit too out of its own grasp. And I do think there's a lot of movie going on in this movie. There's like 3 different movies happening, and it almost becomes overwhelming. But I think it holds together, and it's definitely one of the most intriguing and most experimental of the Pixar movies from that studio. So one of the top, not top tier, but pretty high up on that Pixar list. But it is a hard list to crack. So Soul, really great. Really fascinating and unexpected movie, kind of like jazz. It riffs and it ad-libs in a way that you don't expect.
HT, just to let you know, I had a chance to interview the filmmakers, and the interview is spoiler heavy, so it'll come out on Christmas Day, I think, when the movie drops on Disney Plus. But they addressed that concern that you had about like the Black character being involved in a body swap thing with an animal. They talked about that directly and sort of what they thought about that and how they thought that the movie sort of sidestepped some of the issues that people might have with that. So I just wanted to plug that real quick in case other people have a chance to see this and think the same thing. I would recommend reading what they had to say about it. So that's all. What else have you been watching?
I also watched Minari, which is the movie written and directed by Lee Isaac Chung and stars Steven Yeun as a father of a Korean American family who transplants his family to rural America to start a farm in Arkansas in search of the American dream. And I love me some assimilation angst. And this movie, which is such a fragile, tender portrait of that search for the American dream and that conflict, that dilemma around assimilation, is so well done. It's such a lovely film. Steven Yeun gives a tremendous performance, and I also want to add that Han Yeri, who plays his wife, is also really excellent, and as is Yoon Ya Jung, who plays the grandmother, who's my favorite character of the bunch. She gives a really earthy and warm performance, and a little bit ornery, in the way that reminds me positively of the grandmother from The Farewell. It just feels very authentic and lived in, and I really absolutely adored her performance and the slow burning, delicate film as well. So that's Minari, which is being released by A24. It's in limited release December 11th, so last week, and goes to a wide release February 12th. A24 needs to really work on their digital releases, especially during like these times. But so I'm not really sure why they are sticking so heavily to theatrical releases, especially being a studio that has been on the forefront of like distribution and being on that kind of digital aside. This is kind of an aside of me like complaining about A24.
Well, yeah, and I think they signed a deal with Apple TV Plus too, right? Because I think On the Rocks is an A24 production, so
Yeah.
you would think that they would just be able to drop it on like directly onto A24 or onto Apple TV Plus, or maybe at least like put it there for people to pay for it or something.
Yeah, and they used to have a deal with Amazon too. I don't know why they are such a stickler. I mean, I understand that the theatrical experience is important, and I know that it's important to save these businesses, but I don't understand why they're such a stickler for keeping their movies in theaters during this time. I just think it's a very unusual for A24, which has been such a good and like forward-thinking company until now. I guess this is kind of I feel bad for like turning this into a complaint about A24, but I feel like Minari is a film that deserves to be widely seen by people, even during these times when theaters aren't exactly safe for everyone. So it's a shame that more people can't see Minari, which is a really, really wonderful movie.
Hashtag release the Green Knight.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to what we've been eating. Brad, what crazy things have you been eating recently?
So still some holiday snacks. So Sweet Tarts ropes are pretty good. Get them at movie theaters. They made some pretty damn good Wonder Woman 1984 inspired ones earlier this year. I think you can maybe still find them around now that the movie's finally coming out. And there's a new holiday punch version of Sweet Tarts ropes that are really good. They're red and green swirls with the Sweet Tart center, and the flavor of them is it's a very like a fruit punch basically kind of flavor, and it mixes really well with that Sweet Tart center. So I wish that they weren't just like a holiday thing, because I feel like this flavor would be good all the time, but apparently it's just a holiday release. So there you go. I'm pretty sure you can find them anywhere the seasonal candy aisle is. Just keep an eye out for them. And then Monster Energy has 2 new juice flavored drinks. I don't really like the regular Monster Energy drinks, but their juice flavor lineup is one of my favorite ones, because I particularly like their Mango Loco flavor. And these 2 new ones are really good as well. It's Papillon and Chaotic. The first one is a new flavor that they hadn't released before, and then the second one is a callback to like one of their original flavors. Apparently, it says this on the can. I'm the kind of person who reads the can sometimes. And so they're both really good. What I love about the Monster Juice ones is they don't really taste like an energy drink. They just basically taste like a slightly carbonated juice, kind of reminding me of a mimosa. Just without the champagne headache that comes later on. So if you like fruit juicy energy drinks, and I would recommend trying both of the new Monster flavors. And then there's a new Kit Kat flavor out. One of my favorite Kit Kats is the Mint Duo. I'm not usually a big fan of dark chocolate, but the dark chocolate with mint is something that I really enjoy. And this time they've done chocolate with a mocha flavor. So it's basically a coffee Kit Kat. And the coffee flavor isn't too overwhelming. It has that great coffee smell to it, and it mixes really well with the wafer. It's almost like you're having like some kind of like coffee biscuit if you want to go that route. Mocha Kit Kat duos, those are really good. And then Snickers peanut brownie squares. This was kind of weird, because I was expecting this to just be like a Snickers with brownie bits in it. But it's actually a Snickers bar that is mostly filled with brownie, and then a layer of caramel, and then nuts in the brownie section of the candy bar. And it's not a full Snickers bar. They are, like the title implies, squares. So it comes in like a pack of like 2 or 3 squares, and then I think the larger one has 4 in it or something like that. And I've been disappointed recently by the brownie flavored things that have come through candy bars. Like there was a brownie M&M that was just kind of meh. But these are actually really good, and I think it's mostly just because it's essentially just a tiny chocolate-covered brownie with nuts and caramel. So it works in their favor.
I was going to say, Brad, like at what point does it cease to become a Snickers and become something else entirely?
I wonder if I don't know this because I didn't really look, even though I'm somebody who reads the can, I don't read the candy bar label. I didn't look to see if it was like a brownie that had like nougat mixed in with it to make it more of like a Snickers bar or what. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the Snickers branding on what is just a candy bar brownie.
All right. So let's move into our final section, which is what we've been playing. Jacob, what have you been playing?
I beat Demon Souls on the PlayStation 5. This is a game we talked about a few weeks ago. It's a remake of the infamous PlayStation 3 game that is incredibly difficult, punishing, brutal, but very rewarding. One of the best designed, strangest games I've played in a long time. And And Remake does a strange choice where it chooses to polish up a lot of things, but chooses to keep a lot of the original game's quirks. So if you're like me and played the company's later games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne first, going back to Demon Souls is strange because there are certain elements in it that are very aged and archaic and were cut out for a reason. But given this PlayStation 5 coat of polish, so it looks and plays incredibly. But that was, I guess, part of the idea of a remake is to make that game, not to try to change what made it that game. Anyway, I beat it, and I'm proud of it because it's hard. It was hard AF, guys. And according to the achievements, or sorry, the trophies, what they call them on PlayStation, I think only like 37% of the players who played it have beaten it. So I'm among 37% of people who beat Demon Souls, and I feel very good about it. I'm very proud of myself. I'm an excellent video gamer. High five to me.
Congratulations, Jacob. Well done. All right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of the show. Slash Film Daily is published 3 times a week, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. I encourage everybody to go to slashfilm.com multiple times a day and just read all of the stuff that we're putting out there. There's some great stuff. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget also to rate and review the podcast. That helps us out a lot. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys on Friday.
Ben.
Yes, Jacob.
Ben, I've opened up not the Gargantuan Book of Insult, Offense, and Effrontery by Louis A. Safian, but a seasonal web page.
Oh boy, another one of these, huh?
Yeah. I probably will not be on the podcast next week. I will not be at my home for the holidays. Playing it safe, quarantining now, getting my shots, getting my test to make sure I'm traveling safely. But because of that, I want to make sure that we have a seasonal edition of the insults before I am away for a little while.
All right.
So this is from bestinsults.com/Christmas insults. I've read through some of these. Some of these I do not recommend going to this page because there are some questionable jokes among these. But I will find the ones that will make Louis A. Safian proud. All right, Ben, is it Christmas? Or is there a reason why you're extra stupid?
Wow. Okay. That I don't really see the correlation, but okay.
Look, this is from bestinsults.com, Ben. So clearly they know what they're talking about, right?
Indeed.
And Chris, you're so slutty. Santa's going to be going ho, ho, ho.
Oh, my God.
Wow. I mean, thank you.
Chris's wife is going to be upset.
HT, you got the best Christmas present ever. A broken drum. You can't beat it.
Ah.
These are terrible. I scroll down further. They get increasingly dire, increasingly non-specific to Christmas, and increasingly racist. I have to stop this.
No. So wait, who didn't get one? Brad? Is that right?
Well, Brad, did you know that stressed is just desserts spelled backwards? It's not even an insult.
No, what is it? It's just
That's not
a
even.
Bestinsults.com. Come on.